I am glad to welcome you to my channel Sinister Horror Stories. Before we start the story, I would like to ask you to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you. It was a humid July evening when we finally reached the clearing. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, and the setting sun cast long slanting shadows through the towering trees. This was the third day of our camping trip, and fatigue was setting in. But we were exhilarated by the promise of an untouched campsite, a hidden gem we had heard about from a local back in town. There were 4 of us: Matt, the adventurous leader; Sarah, his ever-skeptical girlfriend; Ryan, the jokester, who always carried a flask in his pocket; and me, Emily, the quiet observer, content to let the others take the reins. The clearing was perfect, a soft patch of grass circled by ancient oaks, their gnarled roots twisting out of the earth like the fingers of some massive creature. We set up our tents and gathered firewood as the last light bled out of the sky. As darkness settled, an uneasy feeling began to creep over me. The forest was eerily quiet. No birds, no insects. Just a thick, palpable silence, broken only by the crackle of our campfire. I mentioned it to the group, but Ryan laughed it off, raising his flask in a mock toast. "Come on, Em, it's the middle of nowhere. Peace and quiet, just like we wanted." His grin was infectious, but it didn't ease the knot of anxiety in my stomach. Matt suggested a nighttime hike, and against my better judgment, we agreed. We took our flashlights and set off into the darkness. The forest seemed to close in around us, the trees pressing close like silent witnesses. I stayed close to Sarah, who muttered about how she hated hiking in the dark. But Matt was insistent, his eyes alight with excitement. "Just a little farther," he urged. "I heard there's an old cabin out here, something abandoned. Should be interesting." After about 20 minutes, the air grew colder. It was unnatural, a sudden drop that made us all shiver. I noticed then that the trees were different here, older, darker, their trunks blackened as if by fire. And the silence, it had deepened into something oppressive, almost tangible. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. "Guys, do you hear that?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. We stopped, listening. At first, there was nothing. Then faintly the sound came. A low, distant moan, like wind through a tunnel, but deeper, almost a chant. It sent a shiver down my spine. Matt's flashlight flickered, then died. "Damn thing," he muttered, shaking it. Ryan's light went out next, then Sarah's. Panic began to rise in my chest. I tapped my flashlight, and the beam wavered, then steadied, but it seemed dimmer, weaker. "Maybe we should head back," I suggested, my voice barely above a whisper. Matt agreed, and we turned around, trying to retrace our steps. But the forest seemed different now, the path less distinct. The trees loomed taller, their branches like claws reaching out to snatch at us. The moaning sound grew louder, rhythmic, almost like a chant. And then, we heard it. Our names. Emily, Ryan, Sarah. A voice, soft but clear, echoing through the trees. I felt my skin prickle with goosebumps. Sarah grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my flesh. "What the hell is that?" she hissed, her eyes wide with fear. Matt tried to remain calm, but I could see the fear creeping into his eyes. "It's just the wind," he said unconvincingly. But it wasn't. The voice continued, closer now, more insistent. It was as if the forest itself was whispering to us, calling us deeper, luring us in. The chant grew louder, and I realized it wasn't just one voice. It was many, hundreds, maybe thousands, overlapping, mingling, creating a haunting symphony that filled the air with an unbearable tension. Ryan was the first to break. "Screw this! I'm out of here!" he shouted and started running. Matt called after him, but Ryan didn't stop. We heard his footsteps pounding against the earth, and then nothing. Just silence. "Ryan?" Sarah called, but there was no answer. Only the whispering, the chanting, growing louder, more insistent. My flashlight flickered again, and in that brief flash of light, I saw them. Shadows, figures moving among the trees, their eyes glowing in the dark. "Run!" Matt shouted, grabbing Sarah's hand. I turned and sprinted, adrenaline surging through me. The forest seemed to close in around us, the shadows stretching and contorting. I could hear the voices all around me now, my name repeated over and over, each syllable a knife slicing through the air. We stumbled back into the clearing, panting, our breath visible in the frigid air. The fire had gone out, the camp in disarray. Ryan was nowhere to be seen. We huddled together, fear gripping us tight. The whispers had stopped, but the silence was worse. A heavy, pregnant silence, as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting. "Where's Ryan?" Sarah whimpered, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know," Matt replied, his voice shaking. "I don't know." We waited, hours passing in agonizing tension, and then, just before dawn, we heard it. A soft rustling. Footsteps. We turned to see Ryan emerging from the trees, his face pale, his eyes wide and empty. "Ryan!" Sarah cried, rushing to him, but he didn't respond. He just stood there, staring past us, his lips moving soundlessly. I stepped closer and felt the blood drain from my face. His lips were cracked, and his skin was cold, almost blue. He looked hollow. "Ryan, what happened?" I whispered. He looked at me then, his eyes focusing for the briefest moment. "They're still out there," he murmured. "They're waiting." And then he collapsed, his body limp, his breathing shallow. We never spoke about what happened after that night. We left the forest at first light, dragging Ryan with us, who never spoke another word. He's been in a hospital ever since, staring out the window, his lips still moving as if whispering to unseen things. And sometimes in the dead of night, I wake up hearing those whispers again, the chant of the forest, calling my name, beckoning me back to the hollow of echoes. Thank you for listening to the story. I hope you enjoyed it. Share your impressions in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like this video. Thank you.